The great chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room Daniel Carter had ever seen. Its walls stretched upward into darkness, covered with symbols from 100 different worlds. Lights floated in the air like tiny stars, and the floor beneath his feet was made of some material that seemed to shift colors when he walked. He had been coming to this room for 15 years, first as a junior diplomat, then as the voice of all humanity. Today would be his last visit. Daniel stood at the center of the speaking circle, a raised platform where those who wished to address the council had to stand alone. Around him, in rising tiers of seats carved from strange metals and grown crystals, sat the representatives of the four great powers of the galaxy. The tall and thin with skin like polished silver occupied the highest tier. Below them sat the insect-like beings with compound eyes that reflected the floating lights. The aquatic watched from tanks filled with their home ocean's water, and the beings made entirely of living crystal, pulsed with soft inner light. Behind Daniel, at the edge of the chamber, stood his aide Amy. She was young, barely 30, with short brown hair and eyes that still held hope. Daniel remembered when his own eyes had looked like that. 30 years of smiling at people who saw him as less than nothing had worn that hope away. High Counselor of the rose from his seat. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived race, and he had led the council for longer than humans had been traveling between stars. His voice filled the chamber without any need for technology to carry it. "We have heard the petition of the human species," said. His tone was the same one might use when discussing a minor inconvenience. "They ask, once again, for full membership in the Galactic Council. They ask to be recognized as equals to races that have sailed the stars for 10,000 years. A soft sound came from the section. It might have been laughter. "The humans point to their contributions," continued. "They remind us of their medical research, their engineering work, their soldiers who fought beside us against the. These things are true. We do not deny them." Daniel felt Amy shift behind him. He knew what was coming. He had known it before he walked into this chamber. "Contribution is not the measure of civilization," said. "A trained animal can perform tricks. A child can help with simple tasks. This does not make them ready for the responsibilities of adulthood." He paused to let his words sink in. "Humanity is too young, too emotional, too primitive in their thinking. They act on feeling rather than logic. They fight among themselves. They destroy their own worlds with pollution and war. Perhaps in another 1,000 years they will be ready, but not today." The vote was quick. The voted no, the voted no, the voted no. The hesitated, their crystals flickering, but in the end they too voted no. 4 races, 4 refusals. 30 years of work dismissed in less than a minute. Daniel did not shout. He did not argue. He simply nodded once slowly, as if accepting a weather report. "The council has spoken," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "Humanity thanks the council for its time and consideration. We will not trouble you with this request again." Something flickered across face. Perhaps it was surprise at the lack of protest. Perhaps it was relief. Whatever it was, it passed quickly. "The council session is concluded," announced. As Daniel walked toward the exit, Amy fell into step beside him. Her hands were shaking. He could feel the anger radiating from her, the urge to turn around and say all the things he had refused to say. "Don't," he whispered, "not here." "How can you just accept this?" she whispered back. "After everything we've done for them, our people died fighting their war. Our doctors saved millions of lives during the Crystal Plague. Our engineers built half the stations in this sector." "I know," Daniel said. "I was there." They passed through a corridor of pale blue light. At its end waited their ship, a small diplomatic vessel that would take them back to Earth. But before they reached it, a voice called out behind them. "Ambassador Carter." Daniel turned. Counselor L of the approached them. Her crystalline body chimed softly with each step, and her inner light was dim, almost apologetic. "Counselor," Daniel said politely. "I wanted to speak with you privately," Elle said. Her voice was like wind through glass chimes. "I want you to know that not all of us feel the way does. Many of us remember what humanity has done for the galaxy. Many of us are grateful. But not grateful enough to vote differently," Amy said. Daniel put a gentle hand on her arm. Elle's light flickered. "You do not understand our situation. To have led the council for, to openly oppose them would be," she searched for the word, "complicated." "I understand perfectly," Daniel said. "You are sorry, but your sorrow changes nothing. You are grateful, but your gratitude is silent when it matters. You wish things were different, but you will not lift a finger to make them so." He smiled, and there was no anger in it, only a deep and terrible tiredness. "We have met many people like you over the years, counselor. On Earth, we have a saying, actions speak louder than words." Elle stood in silence as Daniel and Amy boarded their ship. The door closed behind them, and through the small window, they watched her crystalline form grow smaller as they pulled away. Inside the ship, Amy finally let her composure break. Tears ran down her face as she slammed her hand against the wall. 30 years, Daniel, 30 years of being patient, of being helpful, of proving ourselves over and over again, and they still look at us like we're insects. Daniel sat heavily in the pilot's chair and began entering the coordinates for Earth. His movements were slow and precise. "Amy," he said quietly, "I need you to send a message to President Cole. Priority channel encrypted." She wiped her eyes. "What should I tell him?" Daniel looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that had no room for his people. His face was calm, but something burned behind his eyes that Amy had never seen before. It was not anger. It was something colder and more final. "Tell him they've made their decision," Daniel said. "It's time we made ours." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Nexus Prime Station behind. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, the representatives of 4 great races returned to their business, certain that the humans would come crawling back eventually. They always did. Younger races threw tantrums, made threats, and then returned when they realized how much they needed the Council's protection and resources. They had no idea that this time was different. They had no idea that the quiet man with the tired eyes had just set something in motion that would change the galaxy forever. And by the time they understood, it would be far too late. The changes began so slowly that no one noticed them at first. A human doctor finished her contract at a hospital and returned to Earth. A human engineer completed his work on a space station and did not renew his employment. A human teacher at an academy announced her retirement and left for home. Each departure was small, each departure was legal, and each departure was part of a much larger plan. President Cole addressed the people of Earth 6 months after Daniel Carter's final visit to the Council. He stood in the great assembly hall where leaders of the unified human government met to decide the future of their species. His voice was calm, almost gentle, as he spoke to the billions watching across human space. "For 30 years we have reached out our hand in friendship to the galaxy," he said. "We have shared our knowledge, our labor, and our blood. We asked only to be treated as equals, to have a voice in the community we helped build. That request has been, and so with heavy hearts we announce the Homecoming Initiative. Over the next 5 years all human citizens will return from non-human space. Our embassies will close. Our trade agreements will not be renewed. We will go home." He paused, and when he spoke again, there was steel beneath the gentle words. "This is not a threat. This is not a negotiation. We are not asking the Council to change its mind. We are simply choosing, for the first time in 30 years, to put our own people first." On Prime, a world of vast farms and endless golden fields, the news arrived like a distant storm. Had worked there for 12 years, teaching the insect-like how to grow Earth crops that could survive their planet's harsh climate. His hybrid grains had saved them from a terrible famine just 3 years ago, when a blight destroyed their native food plants. Now he stood at the edge of a field, watching farmers harvest the wheat he had helped them grow. A young named approached him, his compound eyes reflecting the setting sun. "Is it true that you are leaving, friend?" asked. His voice clicked and hummed in the way of his people. Nodded. "My contract is finished. I'm going home." "But why? We need you here. The hybrid seeds still require careful management. The soil treatments must be maintained." Looked at the young. He had watched grow from a larva to a full adult over the past decade. He had taught him everything he knew about earth farming. "I've taught you everything you need," said. "You don't need me anymore." "But we want you here," insisted. "You are part of our community. You are family." The word hit like a physical blow. Family. He thought of the council vote, of the representative raising his limb to reject humanity without a moment's hesitation. He thought of all the years he had spent on this world, helping people who would never see him as an equal. "Then you should have told your leaders that," said softly. He picked up his bag and walked toward the shuttle that would take him home. He did not look back. In deep space, the colony ship Distant Horizon moved from system to system, gathering humans who wanted to return home. Commander Lisa had been given a simple mission: find every human in the outer territories and offer them passage to Earth. She expected it to take years. She did not expect to find what she found on Mining Station 7. The station orbited a dead world, pulling precious metals from its core. When Lisa's ship docked, she found 43 human miners living in conditions that made her stomach turn. Their quarters were tiny, barely large enough to lie down in. Their food was the cheapest nutrient paste available. They worked 16-hour shifts in dangerous conditions, and when they were injured, they received only basic medical care. "We signed contracts," a miner named Pete told her. His face was thin and tired, and he was missing 2 fingers on his left hand. "They said we'd be treated fairly. They lied." "Why didn't you leave?" Lisa asked. Pete laughed bitterly. "How? They don't let us use the communication systems. They don't let us save enough money for transport. We're not slaves, technically. We're just trapped." Lisa gathered all 43 miners onto the Distant Horizon. When the station commander demanded she return them, citing contract violations, she simply sent him a copy of the Galactic Labor Rights Agreement, which his station had violated in 17 different ways. "Sue us," she told him as her ship pulled away, "if you can find a human court that cares." The news of the mining station rescue spread quickly through human space. It was not the first story of its kind. On a dozen worlds, in 100 stations, humans had been treated as cheap labor, as second-class workers, as tools to be used and discarded. The Homecoming Initiative gave them a way out, and they took it by the thousands. Back on Nexus Prime Station, the center of galactic civilization, High Counselor received regular reports about the human withdrawal. He read them with mild amusement. "They're throwing a tantrum," he told his advisors. "Young races do this. They make threats, they stomp their feet, and then they come back when they realize how much they need us. Give them a year, perhaps 2, and they'll be begging for readmission." His advisors agreed. They had seen countless younger species try to assert their independence over the. It never lasted. The galaxy was too big, too dangerous, too complicated for any race to survive alone. The humans would learn this lesson, just as all the others had. On Earth, Daniel Carter retired from diplomatic service. He moved to a small house by the ocean, where he could watch the waves and try to forget the faces of all the aliens who had smiled at him, while voting to keep his people as second-class citizens. Amy visited him sometimes, bringing news of the withdrawal's progress. "The council still thinks we're bluffing," she told him during one such visit. "They're not even trying to negotiate." Daniel poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to her. "That's because they can't imagine a universe where they need us more than we need them. That's always been their weakness. They look at humans and see children playing pretend. They never bothered to notice that those children built half their infrastructure." "Do you think this will work?" Amy asked. "Do you think they'll ever really understand?" Daniel looked out at the setting sun, painting the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and red. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know we can't keep living the way we were, begging for respect that never comes, giving everything and receiving nothing. Whatever happens next, at least we'll face it standing up." Far across the galaxy, in the great halls of power and the humble homes of common people, the departure of humanity continued. Ship by ship, family by family, the humans went home, and the galaxy, so confident in its superiority, barely noticed them leaving. They would not notice for a long time, and when they finally did, they would realize that you never truly appreciate something until it's gone. 3 years after the homecoming initiative began, the cracks started to appear. They were small at first, like tiny lines in a sheet of glass, but cracks have a way of spreading, and soon the entire galaxy would feel them. On Nexus Prime Station, Chief Engineer Mitchell spent her final day training her replacement. The engineer floated in his water tank, his fins moving lazily as she explained the station's fusion core. She had maintained this core for 8 years, keeping it running at peak efficiency through techniques she had developed herself. "The plasma flow needs to be adjusted every 72 hours, she explained, pointing to a series of controls. "If you wait longer than that, you'll get a buildup in the secondary chambers. It won't cause an explosion, but it will reduce power output by 15%. The whose name translated roughly as Wave Walker made a dismissive bubbling sound. "This seems unnecessarily complicated. Our engineers on the do not require such constant attention to their fusion systems." Took a deep breath. She had heard this attitude before many times. The belief that human methods were too complex, too fussy, too much work. What they never understood was that human methods worked. "Your systems on the use different fuel sources," she said patiently. "This station was built with a human-designed core because it produces 20% more power than the standard model. That extra power is why this station can support 300,000 residents instead of 200,000, but it requires more careful maintenance." Wave Walker's fins fluttered in what might have been annoyance. "I am sure I can simplify the process." Wanted to argue. She wanted to explain that she had spent years perfecting this system, that every unnecessary step was there for a reason. But she was tired. She was tired of explaining. She was tired of being dismissed. So she simply handed over her access codes and walked away. 3 months later, a power fluctuation knocked out the entire commercial district of Nexus Prime Station for 6 hours. The official report blamed equipment failure, but those who knew the station well whispered about the human engineer who had tried to warn them. They faced their own problems. For decades, human scouts had mapped the dangerous regions of the Outer Rim, charting safe routes through asteroid fields and around unstable stars. They had done this work for free, sharing their data with anyone who asked, because they believed that knowledge should be available to all. Now, with the scouts gone, colonial ships had to find their own way through unfamiliar space. In the first year after the human scouts left, they lost 4 ships to navigation accidents. In the second year, they lost 7 more. By the third year, their expansion into the Outer Rim had slowed to a crawl. High Counselor blamed the losses on faulty human star charts, never admitting that the charts had been perfect. The problem was that no one had bothered to learn how to read them properly. But the worst crisis came to It started with a single case on there. A young developed strange cracks in her crystalline body, cracks that spread and until she shattered. Within weeks, the disease had spread to thousands. They called it the fracturing, and their best scientists could not find a cure. In desperation, they searched their medical databases for similar cases. They found one. 20 years earlier, a human doctor named had treated a small outbreak of the same disease on a colony world. He had developed a treatment that stopped the fractures from spreading, saving hundreds of lives. The treatment was complex, requiring a specific combination of radiation therapy and chemical baths, but it worked. The problem was that had returned to Earth 3 years ago. and the detailed instructions for his treatment were in a human medical database that was no longer accessible to non-human species. Counselor L sent an emergency message to the human border requesting immediate assistance. For 3 days, she received no response. For 3 days, more shattered and died. When a response finally came, it was not what she hoped for. The unified human government has received your request for medical assistance, the message read. We are willing to provide the treatment protocols you need. However, any humanitarian mission to space will require formal approval from the Galactic Council and official recognition of human sovereignty over our current territory. Please submit your request through proper diplomatic channels. Elle traveled to the human border herself. Her ship docked at a small station called Haven Point, where Commander Chris served as the human liaison to non-human visitors. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen too much. "Commander, my people are dying," Elle said. Her crystalline body flickered with distress. "Surely you cannot let politics interfere with a medical emergency." Chris looked at her for a long moment. "Counselor, do you remember the war?" Elle's light dimmed. "Of course we all remember." "Do you remember what happened at the Battle of Torn Sky, when 3 human medical ships jumped into a combat zone to rescue wounded soldiers? They had no weapons. They had no armor. They came because your people were dying, and they believed it was the right thing to do." "I remember," Elle said softly. 62 humans died in that rescue." 62 humans, Chris agreed. "And when the war was over, when we asked the council to recognize our sacrifice, your people voted against us. Not because you thought we were unworthy. You told Ambassador Carter that you were grateful, but gratitude wasn't enough to make you stand against." Elle's crystals made a sound like breaking glass. "I was wrong. I know that now. Please, Commander, I will do whatever it takes." Chris sighed. "The medicine will be sent, Counselor. We're not monsters. We won't let your people die to make a point. But it will come through official channels, and it will take time. Time that could have been saved if we had been treated as partners instead of pets." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was tired. "I want you to remember this feeling, Counselor. This helplessness. This desperate need for someone to answer your call. This is how humans have felt for 30 years. Every time we asked for respect, every time we were told to wait our turn, every time we were reminded of our place. Remember this feeling and ask yourself if you ever want your people to feel it again." The treatment protocols arrived a week later, delivered through proper diplomatic channels as promised. By then, nearly 2,000 had died from the fracturing. It was a tragedy that could have been avoided if anyone had listened to the humans when they offered to help without conditions, all those years ago. On Earth, Daniel Carter watched the news reports about the plague. Amy sat beside him, her face troubled. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked, "making them wait?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he admitted. "I keep thinking about those 2,000 who died. Each one of them was a person, with a family, with dreams, with a future that will never happen. And I wonder if our need to make a point was worth their lives." "They made us wait for decades," Amy pointed out. "They did, and that was wrong. But does their wrong make our wrong acceptable?" Daniel shook his head. "There are no easy answers here, Amy. The galaxy is learning what it costs to take people for granted. I just hope the lesson doesn't destroy all of us before it's finished." Outside his window, the ocean continued its endless motion, waves rising and falling as they had for millions of years. The universe did not care about the small dramas of living beings. It simply continued, vast and indifferent, waiting to see what choices they would make next. The wormhole opened without warning. One moment, the space near the galactic rim was empty. The next, a swirling tunnel of light and energy appeared, and from it came ships unlike anything the Council had ever seen. They were dark and angular, covered in spikes and weapons, and they moved with a speed that seemed impossible. The OK had arrived. No one knew where they came from. Some scientists said they were from another galaxy entirely. Others believed they came from a dimension beyond normal space. What everyone agreed on was that they were hostile, powerful, and hungry for conquest. The first world to fall was a small colony. The OK ships descended without any attempt at communication, without any warning. They burned the cities, killed the people, and stripped the planet of its resources. When council ships arrived to investigate, the OK destroyed them as easily as a giant crushing insects. High Counselor called an emergency session of the council. For the first time in decades, there was genuine fear in his voice. "We face an enemy unlike any we have encountered before," he announced. "The OK fleet numbers in the thousands. Their weapons are more powerful than our own. They do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender. They simply destroy." The combined fleet of the Council gathered at Sentinel's Gate, a space station built to guard the entrance to the core systems. It was the largest military force the galaxy had assembled since the war. Thousands of ships from all four races waited in formation, ready to defend their homes. The Battle of Sentinel's Gate lasted 6 hours. It was a disaster. The OK ships were faster, stronger, and more numerous than anyone had expected. They cut through the Council fleet like a blade through paper. Battle cruisers, the pride of their navy, were torn apart in minutes. Fighters died by the hundreds. Carrier ships were boiled inside their own water tanks by enemy energy weapons. When it was over, the Council had lost a third of its combined fleet. The OK had lost perhaps 50 ships. In the aftermath, as the surviving Council ships limped back to safety, a terrible realization spread through the halls of power. The lay exposed. If the OK pushed forward, there would be nothing to stop them. Billions would die. Sat alone in his quarters on Nexus Prime Station. For the first time in his long life, he did not know what to do. The Council's military was broken. Their strategies had failed. Their pride had led them to believe they were invincible, and now that pride was killing them. A soft chime announced a visitor. His aide entered, her silver face troubled. "High Counselor, you have a communication from Admiral Al. He says we must contact the humans." Closed his eyes. The humans. The primitive, emotional, young species he had dismissed and insulted for 30 years. The species he had called children playing at civilization. Now they were his only hope. "Prepare my personal ship," he said. "I will go myself." The journey to human space took 2 days. Had never visited a human world before. He had never seen any reason to. But now, as his ship crossed the border into human territory, he looked out at their systems with new eyes. What he saw surprised him. Human stations were neat and well-maintained. Human ships moved in efficient patterns. Human colonies glowed with life and energy on planets that had been empty just a few decades ago. Whatever the humans lacked in age, they made up for in determination. His ship landed on New Virginia, a colony world that served as the headquarters of the Human Defense Force. The air smelled different here, filled with the scent of earth plants that had been brought to this alien world. Humans walked the streets in colorful clothes, laughing and talking with each other. They stared at as he passed, but no one stopped him. Admiral received him in a simple office with plain walls and functional furniture. Was an older man, with white hair and scars on his hands that spoke of a lifetime of service. He wore a military uniform without medals or decorations, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds. "High Counselor," said. His voice was polite but cool. "I am told you wish to speak with me." Had prepared a speech. He had planned to explain the situation calmly, to present the threat logically, to appeal to human self-interest. But standing in this plain room, facing this quiet man whose people he had wronged for so long, all his carefully planned words fell away. "The OK will reach the core systems within weeks," he said. "Our fleet is broken. Our worlds are defenseless. Billions of lives hang in the balance." He paused, and the next words were the hardest he had ever spoken. We need your help." Did not respond immediately. He walked to the window and looked out at the colony below. Families were walking in the parks. Children were playing. Life was going on, peaceful and normal, while half the galaxy burned. "For 30 years," said slowly, "we bled for you, we fought your wars, we healed your sick. We built your stations and mapped your stars. We asked for nothing in return except to be treated as equals." He turned to face. "You called us primitive, you called us emotional, you said we were children playing pretend, not worthy of sitting at your table." His voice remained calm, but there was pain beneath the words. "Do you know how many humans died in the war? I do. I remember every single one. I remember their names, their faces, their families. They died fighting for a galaxy that spat on their memory." Had no answer. For the first time in his life, he felt truly ashamed. "Now you come to our home," continued. "The home you never wanted us to leave, and you ask us to save you." "I am asking," said. "I am not demanding. I have no right to demand anything from you, I know that now." He lowered his head, a gesture of submission that a high counselor had not made in 1,000 years. "I was wrong. We were all wrong, and I am sorry." The room was silent. Studied the alien before him, this ancient being who had held power over countless worlds, now standing with his head bowed like a child admitting a mistake. "We will help," said finally. "Not because you deserve it, not because we forgive you, but because there are innocent people in your space who never voted against us, who never looked at humans with contempt. We do this for them." Relief flooded through. "Thank you, Admiral. Thank you. I will ensure that the Council gives your forces full command authority. You will have access to all our resources, all our intelligence." Shook his head. "No, we will fight our own battle on our own terms. Your commanders will not give us orders. Your admirals will not overrule our decisions. We will coordinate with your forces, but we will not serve under them. Not anymore." It was not the answer had wanted, but he understood. After everything that had happened, he understood. "Agreed," he said. Within days, the human defense fleet mobilized. 300 warships gathered at the border, sleek and deadly vessels designed with human ingenuity and built with human hands. They were outnumbered by the OK, by Council standards. But they had something the Council forces lacked. Commanders who had spent 30 years thinking about war differently, finding creative solutions to impossible problems, because no one else would help them. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the fleet prepare to jump to the battle zone. Beside him, Amy, now a senior advisor to the fleet, studied the tactical displays. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. Nodded. "The Council's tactics failed because they were predictable. They fought the way they've always fought, the way they've fought for 10,000 years. The OK had studied their methods and developed perfect counters." He smiled grimly. "They haven't studied us. They don't know what humans do when their backs are against the wall." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. The second battle of Sentinel's Gate was about to begin, and this time humanity would not be fighting alone and ignored. This time, the galaxy would see exactly what the species they had dismissed was capable of. The second battle of Sentinel's Gate began like the first, with the OK advancing in overwhelming numbers, their dark ships blocking out the stars. But this time, something was different. This time, human ships waited among the defenders. Captain Gregg commanded the attack wing from his ship, the Steadfast. He was a young officer, just 35, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. As the OK fleet approached, he spoke to his pilots through the communication system. "Remember your training. The enemy expects us to fight like the Council. They expect formation battles, predictable movements, defensive postures. We're going to show them something they've never seen before." The battle began with chaos. Human ships scattered in every direction, moving in patterns that seemed random but were carefully calculated. The OK, confused by tactics that made no sense to them, struggled to adapt. While they tried to form firing solutions on ships that wouldn't stay still, Council forces regrouped and attacked from unexpected angles. Led his wing directly at the heart of the enemy fleet. It was suicide by any standard military calculation. 50 human ships against thousands of OK warships. But the humans weren't trying to destroy the enemy fleet. They were trying to reach the command ship, the massive vessel at the center that directed all OK operations. The fighting was brutal. Human ships exploded around as he pushed deeper into enemy territory. Pilots he had known for years died in balls of fire, but he kept going because stopping meant failure, and failure meant the death of billions. When his ship finally reached the OK command vessel, gave an order that no Council admiral would ever have considered. All ships prepare for impact, we're going in. The remaining human ships didn't fire their weapons. They accelerated, using their own vessels as missiles, crashing directly into the enemy command ship. The explosions tore through the OK vessel, destroying its control systems and killing its commanders. Without central command, the OK fleet fell into disorder. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination now crashed into each other, fired on their own allies, or simply froze in confusion. The Council forces, following the human battle plan, swept in and destroyed them by the hundreds. When the battle ended, the OK were broken. Their surviving ships fled back through the wormhole which collapsed behind them. The threat was over. But the victory came at a terrible cost. 47 human ships had been destroyed. Over 3,000 human soldiers had died. Captain survived, pulled from his escape pod by a rescue ship, but many of his pilots were not so lucky. 6 months later, the Galactic Council convened for the most important session in its history. The Great Chamber looked different now. The floating lights seemed dimmer. The walls, once cold and imposing, had been decorated with banners from every race, including humanity. And in the highest tier of seats, a new section had been built, reserved for the representatives of a species that had finally earned its place. High Counselor rose to speak. He looked older than he had before the war, his silver skin faded, his movements slow. The pride that had once defined him was gone, replaced by something that looked like wisdom earned through suffering. "We are gathered here to correct a terrible injustice," he began. His voice echoed through the chamber. "For 30 years, humanity stood beside us. They gave us their knowledge, their labor, their lives. They asked only for respect, for recognition, for a seat at this table, and we refused them." He paused, looking at the human delegation that waited at the edge of the chamber. "We called them primitive, we called them children. We said they were not ready for the responsibilities of civilized society." His voice cracked. "We were fools, arrogant fools who could not see what was right in front of us, and our foolishness nearly destroyed us all." The chamber was completely silent. Every representative from every race listened without interruption. "Today, on behalf of the people and the Galactic Council, I offer humanity a formal apology. We were wrong. We were unjust. We took everything you offered and gave nothing in return. No words can undo the pain we caused. No ceremony can bring back the soldiers who died defending people who did not deserve their sacrifice. But I hope, with time, we can earn your forgiveness." He extended his hand toward the human delegation. "Humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges that entails. Furthermore, we offer humanity a permanent seat on the High Council itself, a voice in every decision that shapes the future of our galaxy. This is not payment for your service. It is acknowledgement of what you have always been, our equals." Ambassador Torres stepped forward. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen both the worst and best of the galaxy. She had spent 20 years in diplomatic service, watching humanity be dismissed and ignored. Now she stood where Daniel Carter had once stood, but the room had changed. "The unified human government accepts your apology," she said. Her voice was clear and strong. "We will take our place on the council, and we will work beside you to build a better future for all species." She paused, and when she continued, her words carried the weight of decades. But let this moment be remembered. Let it be taught in every academy, on every world, to every child who will inherit this galaxy. The measure of a civilization is not how it treats those it needs, but how it treats those it thinks it doesn't. We are here today not because you finally learned to value us, but because we valued ourselves enough to leave. Remember this lesson. Remember what it cost, and never let it be repeated. The applause that followed was thunderous. Representatives from every race rose to their feet, their sounds of approval mixing into a wall of noise that shook the ancient chamber. For the first time in galactic history, humans stood as equals among the stars. On Earth, Daniel Carter watched the ceremony on a screen in his small house by the ocean. Amy sat beside him, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Daniel nodded slowly. He should have felt triumphant. He should have felt vindicated. But instead, he felt only a deep, tired sadness. "So many people died for this moment," he said. "All those soldiers, all those years of suffering, was it worth it? Was any of it worth it?" Amy took his hand. "I don't know if it was worth it, but it was necessary. The galaxy would never have changed if we hadn't forced them to change. Sometimes, the only way to earn respect is to stop asking for it." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, among those countless stars, his people were finally free. "Do you think they've really changed?" Amy asked. Daniel considered the question carefully. "I think they've learned," he said finally. "They've learned what it feels like to need someone who isn't there. They've learned that power and age don't make you wise. They've learned that the young and emotional species they dismissed was the one that saved them all." He turned to face her. "Whether that learning becomes real change depends on what happens next. It depends on what they do when they forget to be afraid of losing us. It depends on whether the next generation remembers this lesson or repeats our mistakes." On Nexus Prime Station, something remarkable was happening. In the recreation district, children of different species were playing together. A human girl chased a boy through the corridors, both of them laughing. A teenager showed magic tricks to a group of young. An elder watched them all with something that looked almost like hope. These children did not remember the time before, when humans were treated as lesser beings. They did not know about the years of rejection and pain. To them, the galaxy had always been a place where all species worked together, where everyone had value, where friendship crossed the boundaries of biology and history. Perhaps that was the real victory. Not the battle, not the apology, not the seat on the council. The real victory was these children, growing up in a galaxy that was slightly better than the one their parents had known. Daniel Carter never returned to space. He spent his remaining years in his house by the ocean, writing his memoirs and teaching young diplomats the lessons he had learned. When he died, 20 years after the war, he was buried with honors reserved for the greatest heroes of human history. But the best tribute came from the galaxy itself. On the anniversary of the Second Battle of Sentinel's Gate, every race in the Council observed a moment of silence. Ships stopped in space. Factories went quiet. People of every shape and color paused to remember the humans who had saved them and to promise that they would never forget. In the great chamber where humanity had once been rejected, a new inscription was carved into the wall. It was in every language of every race, so that no one could claim ignorance of its meaning. "Here learned the galaxy that strength is not in numbers, wisdom is not in age, and honor is not in power. Here learned the galaxy that the young may teach the old, the few may save the many, and the rejected may become the redeemed. Here learned the galaxy humility and gratitude and the true meaning of civilization." The stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small dramas of the beings who lived among them. But those beings, human and alien alike, looked up at those stars with new understanding. They knew now that the future was not written. They knew that change was possible. And they knew, perhaps for the first time, that they were all in this together. The galaxy had changed. The question was whether it would stay changed. Only time would tell.